This is Andrew Whitstadt, and you were listening to Heavy Board. And we're recording this on July 15th, 2025. My guest today is Leslie Rasmussen. Leslie is a Los Angeles native, graduating from UCLA, and Leslie cut her teeth in the writing trade in one of the most cutthroat industries a writer can venture into, television. Leslie began her career writing for sitcoms and other LA industry projects. Some of the sitcoms she wrote for include stars such as Roseanne Barr, Norm Macdonald, Drew Carey, Burt Reynolds, and many, many more listeners. And of course, as a millennial, I couldn't possibly forget that she also worked on the now classic Nickelodeon cartoon, The Wild Thornberrys. Leslie worked mostly as a comedy writer, but after leaving the industry to raise her family, she transitioned to novel writing. Her debut novel, After Happily Ever After, was published in 2021, followed by her next novel, The Stories We Cannot Tell, in 2023. And her latest novel, titled When People Leave, came out just this past spring. A story that centers around three sisters who come together after their mother commits suicide. Themes of grief, loss, love, sisterhood, family, and more all collide to create an adventurous and heart-wrenching tale. Leslie has been featured on NPR, XM Radio, and countless local and national radio and television stations all over the country. She's run her own nutrition and health business for decades, and her work has been highly praised and awarded throughout her long career. And it is a pleasure to welcome her onto Heavy Board today. Leslie Rasmussen, thank you so much for coming on Heavy Board.
Thank you, Andrew, for having me.
Of course. Now, the question we always start this with is, what was your childhood like? Where did you grow up? What did your parents do? How did these early years start to form Leslie in this way?
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles, where I still am. And I had a really great childhood. My mother was, when I was really young, she was a stay-at-home mom. And then she went back to school and became a teacher. And then she went back to school again and became a therapist. So I'm from a long line of people changing careers. And then my father was in advertising, but he was always writing. I mean, he wrote for advertising, but he also got a cinematography degree, master's degree in from USC. So he was always doing lots of writing for lots of different people. And that's kind of where that begins. Let me think. What was the other question? Oh, how I grew up like going off to camp and sending letters back home that were always humorous. My father, in fact, kept a lot of those letters. And it was really fun to go back. And when he read them to me, my father passed away about 9 years ago now.
Oh,
But when he read them to me, I would crack up because they would be things like, oh, I burned down the camp. Nope, just kidding. I did like whatever I did. I was a good kid, but I love to tease them a lot. And basically, I grew up around the studios, which is something that I cherished. I am a crazy studio person. When I was 14, you used to be able to, before 9/11, you could go
right.
to Universal Studios and you could go up the Bank of America and down the back steps and into the studio. So I used to go and walk around. I was 14. I am not tall. I will tell you that. I'm under 5 feet. So I don't know why nobody ever stopped me, but I would walk all around the studios. And there was something about it that was so glamorous to me that that's what I really
Yes.
wanted to do. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be at the studios.
Yeah, that's fantastic too, that there is this glamour to LA, Hollywood. I've heard other people describe it as, I like Bret Easton Ellis. I listen to his podcast regularly and
Mhm.
stuff, and he always describes it as kind of it's a company town, but you wouldn't think that it's a company town because it's this huge American city, but also everything kind of revolves around the entertainment industry. All the other businesses are there or sprung up over the years to do
The
that. So that's interesting.
restaurants, when
Yeah.
the business goes on hiatus, all the restaurants around suffer, which is sad.
Right.
But it happens because everybody sort of scatters. And I mean, everybody I know, even tangentially, has something to do with the business. It's
Right.
just weird.
whether a lawyer in the business, yeah, or
Yep.
advertising in the business, yeah,
Agents,
something,
yeah,
yeah.
something to do with the business to live here. Yeah,
I
because otherwise it's
also
too expensive.
yes, yes. Also, the fact that you said that your mother was a school teacher for a while there, I always bring this up because it's so incredible the number of writers that we've had on here that say one of the parents or both parents were a school teacher in
Oh,
some
really?
way and just emphasize that reading, writing, books, literature, stories throughout history and kind of all of that. Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
incredible how that correlates.
my mother would actually teach in some of my, I mean, she was a substitute. And so she would come into some of my classes and all my friends would be like, do I call her Kathy or do I call her, Mrs. Whatever, and it was so confusing for them. And it was weird to have my mom teaching some of my classes. But she was like the perfect mom to me. She was like super mom. She would
Right.
have dinner ready every single night. She would come home. She would have, if we were home, we would put dinner in the oven and she'd come home and yeah, we'd all have dinner together. We basically had dinner together every single night. And my dad would do charades with us at the table. And my favorite thing my dad used to do when I was a kid was he would take paper bags, which we would take our lunch in to school, and he would write like funny notes or crossword puzzles or something. And everybody would come around and go, "What's on your bag today?" It was really fun.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you said your dad was in advertising. Did he work in the Hollywood industry, or I guess it's not
No, he
necessarily just,
worked for a company called Revell, which made models, and then he
oh,
worked for Nissan. But he was always doing other things for them. Like with Nissan, they did
right,
this stuff with Paul Newman, and so my dad would write all of it, things like that. So
right.
he was always writing.
Yeah, and as a writer, when you go to school for this stuff, many listeners know this, your options are limited usually, so you go into advertising. I've worked in advertising doing
Yeah,
something similar and obviously not at that level, but yeah, I love the art of advertising, the art of ad copy. These things,
yeah,
what makes you want to purchase this product? What makes you love this product? Like it's the
exactly.
advertising, it's how it's framed, it's how the story that's behind it when you see the ad.
And everybody
Uh,
judges it too. I mean, because
exactly.
everybody
Yeah.
sees it. So we all judge whether we think it's a good ad or a bad ad. There's so many ads out there that I don't even know what the products are, but I love the
Yes.
which is
When
not
I
necessarily a good thing. But
yes, I always did this when I taught college for a while. I would perfume ads and car ads are usually the most confusing.
yep.
I'd put them up there. I wouldn't tell the class, and I'd just say, what are they selling you? Like, could you even know what they're selling you
And
right now?
sometimes it's a car, but you don't even know what kind of car.
Right.
You don't know the brand. You don't know anything, which is kind of crazy. But yeah,
Yeah, and it'll be like an elaborate, like 5-minute holiday commercial. Yeah, you're
yeah,
like, okay.
exactly.
The next question we always like, and you said this already a little, when did reading and writing come into your life? You said very early with the
Well,
family like
yes
that?
and no. I wrote stories, I kept a journal. I did not ever think about being a writer though.
Right.
It never occurred to me. I just I just did it. But, when I went to college, I went to UCLA for communications, and all I knew was I wanted to work at the studios. But I didn't consider writing at the studios. I just considered being there and figuring it out when I got there.
Yeah, yeah, that's great too. Lewis Black has a great quote I always pull out for this, where it's just kind of, I wanted to be a writer because you didn't have to do anything. You just had to say, "Well, I'm a writer," like, and that's it. Like now you're a
It's
writer.
true.
Yeah. All right, so that's fantastic. And the next question is always kind of, what were some of the first writers you were enamored with, or who are your go-to kind of inspirations, or would you say idols in the world of letters? And this can be anything. Anything goes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the first book that I can remember that I read over and over and over again was from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by E.L. Konigsberg. Something about that book, I just kept reading it. And then I read Judy Blume all the time when I was young and read every single thing, including once I became an adult, I read everything she ever wrote. There's something about her writing that really appealed to me. And then I read things like Charlotte's Web and The
Yes.
Outsiders and, Roald Dahl and Phantom Tollbooth. I loved all those books. I liked fiction. I was never
Yes.
somebody who read nonfiction. I always read fiction from the time I was young. And I loved those writers. And there's something about them that I related to, especially Judy Blume more than anything in the world, because, there's bullying in her books, there's everything. And you learn a lot from her books in a way that's so entertaining.
Yeah, it's very interesting the importance of Bloom, especially on children's literature, when you're first discovering this stuff. Like even me as a kid, like those were some of the first children's books you're getting. Obviously, you're getting, the Maurice Sendak stuff and all
Yeah.
of that, but
Yeah.
the more contemporary kind of Judy
Yeah.
Blume stuff
Curious
was,
George and all the rest of
yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, it is incredible how important that is, and just discovering that and discovering you love stories and all that. So yeah, so you said you started when you were a kid. Did
Yeah.
like kind of yeah, okay, the next question is I wanted to ask you was going off of that really was screen and television writing. How did that start? Was that something you always wanted to do? Did you just fall into it? Was it just kind of I don't know. I mean, we like these kind of things on this podcast. How did you get started writing for the screen or writing, especially we're going to get to comedy too, but just writing for the screen in general? Obviously there's a bunch of people listening that would love to do that for a living or break in. How
Yeah.
did you come to it? How did that
Well, it's a
happen? Yeah,
lot harder now because people come
right.
from all over the world. So it's a very different thing now. But at the time, I did a lot of internships when I was at UCLA. So I worked at this place called Newscope, which was like a TV magazine. I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do. I worked at Laura, which Lorimar is no longer Lorimar, but I worked at that studio. I worked at what was MTM, Mary Tyler Moore.
Okay.
That was my favorite lot. That's the studio Radford lot, which is smaller. It's not so intimidating, but there was something about that lot I loved. So when I finished college, I went back to them and they hired me as a temp to go to office to office to office. And I was a lot of times put in the executive offices. So I worked for Arthur Price, who was the president of the company, and he was also Mary Tyler Moore and Bob Newhart's manager. And I loved working for him because in person, he seemed so scary. Everybody was afraid of him. But the moment you were in his office and the door closed, he was super duper nice. And I used to answer the phone, and Bob Newhart would call, and I'd go, Bob Newhart's on the phone for you, or Mary Tyler Moore is on the phone for you. Um, but at the same time that I was working there, I thought I wanted to be an actress. So I was doing some commercials and things like that. And I got to a point where I just thought, I went to UCLA. This isn't really what I want to do. I didn't have the passion for acting. I just wanted to be at a studio lot. So I ended up getting a job as an assistant on Hill Street Blues. And I was working on that show with the executive producers. And but I never went to that set ever. I always went to the comedy sets. And at that point, it was not the original Bob Newhart show, but Newhart. And I would hang out there all the time. Every time I had lunch, I would go and watch the rehearsals. And I met a lot of the writers. And I was just naive. I just kept thinking, wow, I can do this. How hard can this be? So I would go back to my office, and on my time off and at home, I just started writing. I wrote spec after spec after spec. I started with Newhart and I moved to so many different shows like Golden Girls and Seinfeld and Frasier at the time, and I just kept writing. And eventually, one of the women that worked on, at the time, there were not a lot of women in comedy. And people also didn't think women were funny at the time. So if you got in, it was great. And one of the women on Newhart, I got to know her and she read my writing and she really wanted to support women. And so she went to her agent and sent him all my stuff, and he liked my stuff enough that he said, okay, I'll take her on and we'll see what happens. And she was working on a show called Major Dad. And so that was my first with Gerald McRaney, and that was my first job. She got me my first script. She got it to all the executive producers and they liked it, so they hired me to do. And that was my first script. And at that point, I had moved from Hill Street Blues. I was now an assistant on Alf. Do you remember Alf?
I was a little too young for the actual airing, but I
Yeah,
watched
you
it on Nick at
probably
Night.
were.
Yeah, Nick at Night when they aired the
Yeah.
reruns.
That was a
Yeah.
fun show to work on because the Paul Fusco, who does the puppet, was very funny, and rehearsals he would make the puppet drunk. And it was so funny. We called him Ralph because it was rehearsal Alf. And he would say the most off-color things. I mean, it was really fun to work on the show. And then I left there and I went to work with Carol Burnett on the second, not her original show, obviously, but the one that was called Carol and Company. And while I was there is when I sold my first script. So I just quit and I left. And I started doing some freelance stuff and slowly did pilots. And I was doing a lot of work there. And that's when I started working. Like I did Roseanne and I didn't do the Drew Carey show. I did a show called The Good Life that was Drew Carey really shined in that show. He was the one thing that was really amazing in that show. And then he did the Drew Carey show. So I worked with him. He's a great man. And I worked with Burt Reynolds. And I always had a joke because I always ended up doing the last episode before the shows got canceled. Even shows that had been around for a while. For some reason, they would give me an episode and then find out the next year they were canceled. I was like, oh, I feel so bad. It was just kind of funny. But then, like you said, I did the Wild Thornberries, which was completely different because
Right.
animation you when you're in fiction television you're not writing all that description. You're just sort of writing someone enters the room, you might write what they're wearing just if it's important. um, but in animation you're writing everything, so I had to really learn that you have to describe what these characters are doing, which was completely different for me. I had never done that before. And then after that I did Sweet Valley High, and I was on that, I think it was like 12 weeks because I was very pregnant and they were the only people that would hire me. So I did a bunch of episodes and I worked every day and they were going to extend my contract. And I finally just said no because I was like, I think I was like 8.5 months. I had my kids early, so I was 8.5 months pregnant. And I went home after I quit and my water broke that weekend.
Wow.
So I was like, I didn't get any break. I didn't have anything. I mean, as you know, you have a little kid, brand new. I didn't have a bassinet. I mean, I had like a crib, but I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
So, so that's pretty much the start of my career.
That's fantastic. I love hearing those stories, and it does seem like it's from another world to a lot of people in my generation with kind of, yeah, I remember I've been thinking about this more, but with the boomer artists, Spielberg and stuff, when you learn their kind of origin story, it's always kind of just this, oh, I wandered on to the studio lot
Yep.
and then somebody let me start sweeping the floor
Yeah,
and slowly building from, building from there. And I was like, wow, like me growing up, like that would never happen. Like you weren't allowed there. You weren't allowed in. There was
exactly.
extreme
Since
security.
9/11, there's massive security. You can't just walk on a lot anymore.
Yeah.
I've been on every lot, but my Universal's a really wild lot to walk around on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. That's,
And I
I'm
was
sure people.
14. I mean, they had these, tour buses going by, and I'm thinking, nobody's stopping me. I just walked around.
Everyone is like, oh man, it sounds like it was a better time, but we'll, we'll reserve that judgment. Yeah.
I know, it's true.
But next question, why comedy writing? Were you always drawn to comedy and humor and comedians?
Yes. The answer to that is yes. I used to go to the improv all the time out here and the comedy store. I just thought it was really fun. And I think, honestly, the real reason I was drawn to comedy was even more that I worked on a drama. I was not a huge fan. I mean, I know people probably kill me for this, but I wasn't a huge fan of Hill Street Blues. I love St. Elsewhere, but I wasn't a huge fan of Hill Street Blues. And so by going over to comedy, the comedy writers looked like they were having so much fun. I mean, I was around all the writers for drama, and it's very different. They
Right.
don't do a room like they do in comedy. They they're more individualized. They come up with the outline, they turn it in, and they go off and they write it. It's just less, I felt like it was less community. I felt like comedy was more fun, which it was for me. I mean, when I got into it, I thought it was a blast.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting too, how that kind of the differences too. And we're going to get to that too, the differences between drama, right? Especially because your novels are much more drama filled than
Yeah, they all
yeah.
have comedy in them, but the topics are more dramatic.
Absolutely. And I want to get to that too, because that's a huge thing for writing, yeah, with great novels. But so working with some of the biggest names in the game in this kind of and writing on what are now, now beloved classic sitcoms, of course you don't know that at the time, but so
Right.
I just wanted to ask, how was that? Is it one of those things that you don't really think about when you're doing it? Was it just this super inspiring, like, oh my God, I'm working with all these people that inspire me and they're pushing me to be funnier and funnier. I don't know. I mean, how was working on sitcoms in kind of the heyday of sitcoms,
Right. It was actually both. It was really fun. You learn so much from higher level writers because you'll pitch a joke and you'll think it's really funny, and then they'll take that joke and add like three words, and the next thing you know, you're like, oh my God, that's such a better joke. You learn a lot of the mechanics from other people. So that part was really great. The thing I didn't love was it's competitive in a way, and it's probably worse now, but people will cut you down.
Oh yeah.
You know, you come up with something and the exec producer says, that's great. And somebody else will go, no, I don't like it. I don't get it, you know, and that's really hard. There's a lot of rejection, not necessarily from the script you're turning in, but more from the room because everybody wants to be funny. I think it's probably different in drama, but everybody is vying for, I got a joke in, I got a joke in. So that part's really hard. And I
Right.
enjoyed working with all the actors, but actors are not always, what you think they are.
Yeah. 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 I've
It
heard things
depends.
about that. Yeah.
Drew Carey is exactly who you think he is. He's a doll.
Yeah, and I've heard that, people even talk about it on podcasts now, with kind of the SNL writers' room and kind of how cutthroat that is.
Oh,
Everybody
I've heard
wants their
that
joke
is,
on air. Yeah,
yes, and I've heard that like they write like a 15 million different sketches
right,
and they get like one in 5 weeks. I mean, that
right.
would kill me. That would be really hard.
And then there's the aspect that I've heard, like Lauren has final say for that. I'm saying Lauren as if I know him, but yeah, Lauren
Yes.
Michaels listeners,
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know
the guy who
either.
runs it.
Yeah,
And you'll get something through and everyone said, "Oh yeah, it's great." And then he cuts it last minute before you go to air, so you don't get, it's
exactly.
very frustrating and yeah, it's interesting how that
Yeah,
maybe I get everybody, nobody wants to put on a play that nobody watches, so they want their
exactly.
stuff seen by people
Yeah.
and
And also it gets them promotions and other
right,
jobs and everything
right,
else. So it's
right.
pretty cutthroat. It can be.
Yeah, yeah. There's the fiction world has turned into that as well. The kind of literary side of things has turned into a very kind of
Really? See, I
not
find
quite
that
that
authors
cutthroat,
are
but
amazing. I have met so many amazing authors who have just like taught me a lot and been so helpful in learning the craft.
yeah,
Different.
there's it definitely depends where you are. Yeah, like it's but yeah, that's always what happens, what people do with that, how competitive it is. Well, because yeah, and I mean, especially for literary, it's probably not as competitive in the literary side of things because there's less money, there's less
Well, there's
jobs
no
coming
money,
after.
but
Right. Yeah.
still, I mean, it's yeah.
That's always one of my questions too,
Yeah.
that we'll get to. Yeah. But you mentioned this already, and even in drama, comedy and humor seems to go a very long way. And I'm just curious on your thoughts on this. And this isn't a podcast where we need, answer it right now, but just your thoughts. Why do you think comedy is so essential to good drama, and vice versa on that too?
I think it's like life. I think life is messy, and I think that people need to find some sort of laugh somewhere. And even when you're going through something really tragic or really horrible, like for example, when my father passed away, my sister, I have two sisters, and we went to, my parents live up Northern California. And so we went up there to be with my mom that day. And we just sat down and, we were crying one minute and laughing the next because my
Right,
dad was so funny and the things he did was so funny. And to me, I think it's really important. I mean, obviously, when you're really going through it, there's no laughter at the moment. But at the same time, if you can find some sort of lightness, I think life can be tough and things we go through can be very tough at different points in our life. So I think it's important to have some humor in drama. I mean, just, I'm not as usually, I mean, I do like medical shows and I do like lawyer shows, but I like when they add something or a crazy character in there or
right.
something to lighten the mood.
Yeah, that famous what Billy Wilder quote, right? For God's sakes, make them laugh.
Yeah,
Even if you're doing a hardcore drama. Yeah,
exactly.
it's interesting because the best authors, the best literary fiction, the best fiction stuff usually has both. There's like a very serious, and then all of a sudden there's a little joke and lightens things up a little bit.
Yeah,
And that's life. Like you said, yeah, it is life with this kind of nothing's 100% all the time. It's always this kind of mood swings, these kind of, especially when you're grieving or something very like
right.
that, like a death in the family or anything. You're obviously grieving, but then you're also laughing because you're making, a part of the grieving process is remembering and healing and talking about the jokes and the inside jokes you had and all of that. So it's like,
Exactly.
it's a depth that like if you're doing so I mean even I'm thinking like Charles Dickens, like his stuff, a lot of the jokes they hold up too, like from like 150 years ago
Yeah,
they hold up, like they're
yeah.
kind of funny still. and it just
Because they're
elevates all the stories.
characters.
Right.
That's what I
Yes.
like. I
Yeah.
like characters and stuff. I don't want to just like in sitcoms, you're kind of going for the joke a lot of times, but they always, if they don't come out of the characters, then I don't think they're funny. I don't
Right.
like shows that just go boom, boom, boom. I like shows that take a character like Roseanne and all the jokes that come out of her mouth, like, that, what is it, that rats eat their babies and all those kind of things, they come out when she's mad at them or when there's something going on in that show that provides humor about, whatever's messy. And that's what I like.
Yeah. 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 That's incredible too, with that kind of how it works and how it entices you. I mean, I've heard things like this, and I'm sure you could probably confirm this, where like, the first season of a show, and you can even see this as a viewer when you're watching it, everybody's trying to figure it out. Whether you have like the writers, the actors, everybody's trying to figure it out. And then by season two, three, you start seeing like the actors are very comfortable in the character. That makes the writer's job a little easier because you know how they're going to say something. Like it kind of that it starts to meld slowly, slowly, slowly with all those things. Like I
Yeah,
said,
and
I've
that's
been
why a lot of times, well, most people, I think, do backstory.
right.
Like you take a character and you'll be like, okay, what do they like? What do they not like? Because it forms the character. And then, like you said, most pilots are not the best episode by any
Right.
means because everybody is trying to figure out, and the network usually wants they'll they'll put in and say more pipe, and you're like, oh, now I'm telling everybody what the show is, and then you end up cutting it later, and so it's like there's just a pilot has too much time because the network gets involved, and once the show goes to series, they're still involved but it's a
Right.
little bit less than a pilot, which is like over a year process a lot of times. And so they have a lot of say in a pilot.
I didn't prepare for this, but I'm just curious for my own kind of like you hear this all the time, but is that normally the case where you have these kind of like, producers or executives at the studio kind of breathing down your neck and maybe they'll make a decision where like it doesn't make any sense, but maybe it makes sense on a financial level, but not for the show. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld has said things like this. I guess, having his own show made him very aware where you have to tell them no if you're the star and you can kind of tell them no, you have to because
I think the best executive producers and the best stars will say, no, that's not what we're going for. You don't need to trust us. But there are people, you want to keep your job.
right,
So there are people that cave, and I feel like you can see when they cave. It's
right,
I get it. I get that they want to keep working. I get all of that. But it is hard sometimes because a lot of these companies now, not when I first started, but a lot of these companies now are run by business people. They're
right,
no longer run by creatives. And that was the one thing about Mary Tyler Moore. You had Grant Tinker who started it with Mary, and it was all about let's give all, Stephen Bochco for Hill Street Blues. Let's give all these people creative power. Like we're going to walk away and we're going to let them do what they do. And we're not going to get in the way. And that was the best way to work because, now if you have these huge corporations owning, Comcast or whatever,
right,
owning these companies, all they're looking at is the bottom line and their stockholders.
right,
And they're not looking at the audience, which is probably why the younger audience is going to, TikTok and YouTube and other things because it doesn't relate to them anymore.
right. Yeah, that's interesting too, how that's changing. And I mean, we talk about it all the time. It's a theme on the podcast. The media is changing. I mean, podcasting didn't
Yeah,
exist, a
right,
certain number of years
exactly.
ago. I mean, who am I? I'm a guy that's just started this podcast a few years ago. And, I get to talk to all these great writers and stuff. It's really is kind of surreal when you think about how much has changed, even in a 5-year span now. Everything moves
Oh
so
yeah.
quickly.
And it's
And
really changed since I did it.
publishing industry, television industry, film, like all of this stuff. There's everything is changing so quickly. All of these arts industries are struggling to keep up. It is kind of insane. Maybe not even insane. Maybe it's inevitable. Like
Yeah.
kind of that that
Yeah.
that the market dynamics change or something. But yeah, that's interesting. Uh, I know we got a little off topic there, but I was interested, so thank you for
Yeah,
bearing with
sure.
me, Leslie. Yeah, grief. Grief. It's in the novel. I wanted to ask you about it. Why grief? Why is it such a rich topic for fiction or even comedy, really? And again, this is not a podcast where we need definitive answers, just how you feel about it, how you think about it with grief, and
Yeah.
And that's a big question too. It's always, so please answer it however you want. Yeah.
I noticed, and I didn't notice this until probably maybe like a month ago, that every single one of my novels deals with grief in a different way. You know, my first novel deals with grief, a woman going through a whole bunch of stuff in her life, and she's grieving the life she used to have because her only kid is about to go away to college. Her husband has some issues going on. Her father has some medical issues. And she's also going, now who am I? Well,
Right.
that's grieving the life that you used to have and grieving what you have no idea what's going to happen. And you're grieving even that your daughter's leaving to go to college and her childhood. And my second book is about things that happen in a pregnancy and they go through grief. And my third book, the three sisters, their mother, who they think is doing great, ends her own life and they move into her house to figure out why. And every single one of these books that I wrote, I had to have comedy in it. First of all, when I write dialogue, it comes out of me. That's just where it is. I write
Right.
witty dialogue, and that's what I enjoy the most over anything when I write a novel. And I think, like I said before, life is messy. And I think grief is one of those things that can hit you no matter where you are and over different topics. So I just like feel like in all my books, I needed to use grief to explain what people are going through. I think it helps to explain it.
Yeah. And there's just so many ways you can go when you're talking about grief. There's so many different ways you can grieve. There's so many different things you can grieve. You can grieve losing your favorite toy or something for a child
Yeah.
character. Or you could do, yeah, losing your parents or your siblings and an adult character and then get drama. There's just so much you can do with it as a creative. I love that you said the witty dialogue. I was like, yeah, that is, that is something I notice in contemporary fiction. People aren't that concerned with dialogue, particularly in the literary side. Like it's always kind of less is more for that, but that isn't necessarily true. If you have a quirky character, let them talk, like it's
Yeah,
actually great.
I don't consider my books literary in
Right,
the
right.
sense like that. I consider them more commercial fiction.
Yeah, yes.
And I do write a lot of dialogue. I mean, I could turn in any book into a script in like 5 minutes just because I think that that's how you get to know the characters. If you hear them talk, then you can go, oh, this one is, pushy, or this one is obnoxious, or this one is always happy, or whatever those things are. I think the dialogue really explains it more than, they always say show, don't tell. And
Right.
if you're describing something, then you're not, you're not showing it, you're telling it. So I always believe that dialogue really just shapes characters and people.
Right. And it usually tends to be the most interesting part. Like when you're reading a novel, if there's a long back and forth exchange between characters, I am usually enthralled, like just burning through that, like it is so great. I mean, that's the same reason we love plays and TV and movies, all that. And there's something
But you
about it
act it
that,
out in your head because
right. Yeah.
you hear the people talking to you. So you're
Yeah.
kind of acting it out as you're reading it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this is the type of podcast too, where this is, I like to think of the literary and the contemporary and the pop and everything kind of all blends together. We don't discriminate. We love all books here. So yeah, I'm the type of person that gets heat for saying something like Stephen King's a very important American writer and should be recognized. And
You should be.
and again, it's not quite the same thing, but it's so important to everything else that it needs to be acknowledged and dealt with. And
Yeah.
whatever. I came out of academia. That's why my brain's always
Yeah,
thinking
it's
that
just
way. Yeah.
hard when people think literary is so important. Why is it not
Yes.
important to, entertain somebody?
Right.
I would
Yes.
rather somebody say to me, and my readers have, oh, your book was so entertaining, but I really related to whatever character. I mean, that made me feel I was going through this. I got so many emails when I put out this When People Leave, telling me that they had sisters that had gone through this with
Right.
them, or they had a parent that died by suicide, and that they felt like this book, like, I didn't know if people would read it if that was
Right.
the case, but people said that they really felt like they were not alone. And that's really why I write.
Right. Yeah. It's weird. Writing's one of those things because you're doing it by yourself. You're alone in a room doing it. And then, but there's this huge connection to all of humanity through it. It's this very kind of, I don't want to say magic, but it's along those lines. It's this
Yeah.
very inspiring kind of connection that, yeah, I
Yeah, 'cause
love hearing
on
that.
TV, you all you can see is the ratings. Or if
Right.
somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, I liked your episode," but you're not going to get any feedback.
And now it's social media, so it's views, right? How many people
Yes,
actually
exactly.
viewed it kind of
Yeah,
instead of watched it or reviewed it or bought the copy of the
right.
DVD or the CD or
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you said that too. I wonder if that's been something that's changed, a subtler thing that's changed. Again, I hate to bring it up because I listen to Bret Easton Ellis, and that's kind of like my his podcast is kind of like my movie Hollywood entertainment thing because he knows all that. He kind of has insiders on and stuff, and they talk about it. One guy he had on said something about how he remembers a studio executive, in the 70s and 80s, quoting Yates in a meeting or something, and he was just saying like that doesn't happen anymore. Like where an executive doesn't even know who Yates is now,
Yeah,
like kind of,
yeah,
all
that's
right.
true.
Whereas you said the artists kind of ran it before and like like really loved Yates, wanted to incorporate that even into a sitcom comedy back and forth. You're hearing that it's inspiring you and you're
Yeah.
writing this out and it makes better content in the long run. That's why people are, I mean, where are the most popular sitcoms now? It's all sitcoms from 30 years ago that people are watching
I
on
know. Look
Netflix.
at,
Like,
I mean, look at what's making the money. They're all in, Friends and Seinfeld and all this stuff is the ones
yeah.
making so much money still.
The Office. I mean, yeah, like maybe The
Roseanne.
Office. Yeah,
Yeah,
Roseanne. Yeah, all these
yeah,
classic American
yeah.
shows that are just man. It is crazy how as they say, as the world turns, right, it keeps on moving.
Exactly. In
So
different
it'll
ways.
change. Yeah. And going off of grief too. I sorry I got sidetracked with that, but in an NPR interview for your second novel, you talked about the struggle of getting pregnant and the trauma. If you're hearing this, it's because you are listening to the free public feed of Heavy Board. To get complete, uncensored, uninterrupted, full access to this podcast, become a subscriber at patreon.com/heavyboard. That's right, Heavy Board is made possible by subscribers like you. For less than 1 cup of coffee per month, you will receive private access to uncensored, full-length episodes, Jerk Shop, heavy bonus content, subscribers-only AMA episodes, bonus extended interviews, and more. Come join the conversation today at patreon.com/heavyboard. That comes with that and the stuff that kind of lasts with it.
Right.
But what I found really interesting, you mentioned not being able to write that novel until almost 30 years after the fact. And I just wanted to ask you, what do you think it is about distance that lets you or just writers in general be able to tackle, big subjects or things close to our heart or something like that? Why is distance so important for getting stuff like that out as a creative?
Because at the very beginning, when I was going through all of that, I found somebody, and this was a long time ago. This was 28 years ago. So there wasn't all this, stuff that we have today with the internet and everything. And I joined this organization, and they paired me up with this woman who was going through a lot of the same things. And we started emailing. And I kept all my emails. And I just took them all because it was traumatic, everything I went through. And I just took them all, put them in a notebook, and put it away. And years and years and years went by. And I actually thought at first I'd write a nonfiction book, but then I was like, oh, I don't really, that's not what I do. I didn't really know how to do it. And I had written my first book, and I thought, this is, I think, something that people could relate to, a lot of women. That's really my most women's fiction book. And so I took out all this stuff and I started reading again. And I was far enough away where it wasn't an emotional thing.
Right.
And so I started reading them and I thought, wow, I was really, honest in all of these letters. And I thought, okay, now I'm going to create something where there's two different sides. One woman's Jewish, one woman's Catholic, one woman's married, one woman ends up pregnant at a one night stand. And I want to take both of those. It's not a religious book in any way, shape, or form, but it talks about compassion. And
Right.
that's all I cared about. And the book basically was pushed to come out because Roe versus Wade all of a sudden was
Oh,
overturned,
right, right.
which was like, oh my God, nobody thought that was going to
Uh,
happen. And so that really affected everything. So that's when I was on NPR and everything, and she wanted to talk about it. Um, but for me, I could get away from it. It wasn't, something that I had all those emotions with, but I did, when I wrote some of those scenes, I wrote them from my heart. That book,
right,
I always call that book my heart
right,
because it's very personal, but it's also removed. None of those characters are me, but there's things in that book,
right,
were similar to things I went through. I didn't put my details in any of the book at all because I didn't want to do that.
right.
And I always get asked that, oh, is this book, basically autobiographical? I'm like, no, these are totally different people. Neither one is me. There's just similarities to experiences I had.
Yeah, that's I was going to ask, was there any pressure or something? Because I know memoir is big right now. Was there pressure from agent or studio or publisher to be like, well, why don't you do a memoir about this instead of a fiction?
No.
No, okay, good, good.
Because I think also anything, I mean, this subject is so, rife with
Right,
controversy, and I was doing everything I could to stay away from the politics. And that's why it doesn't talk about that. The publisher asked me to put in one line because the women live in Los Angeles. And so when they're considering what they're going to do with these pregnancies, they asked me to put in one line that just said, you live in, I don't remember the exact line, but it's like you live in California, so you have options. Something
right,
like that. The Supreme Court gave you options or whatever it was. So, and I didn't even want to put that in, but
right,
I understood why the publisher wanted me to because it was all so, crazy at that point. Um, but I just got so many emails from so many people. And I also knew a ton of people that had gone through similar
right,
things that I had. So I had so many friends that had gone through things and we never talked about it.
right,
The title actually came to me before I wrote the book because I thought I have so many newer friends now after 28 years that have no idea what happened to me. And it's not like you go up to people and you go, "Hey, you want to know what happened to me when I tried to get pregnant?" I mean, I now have two sons. That's what they know.
right,
And but I did a lot of book clubs with that book. And I did one book club, my mother's book club. My mother is 88 years old. And so her friends are all, in their late 70s and 80s. And I did this book club, and these women who all know each other really well were telling me their stories.
right.
And when they were young, abortion was illegal. And, things that happened to them, and also how they couldn't get pregnant and how hard it was. And they were turning to each other. I didn't know you felt this way. I didn't know this happened to you. It was fascinating.
Right.
And that's the one thing that I think that book brought a lot of people together because I really heard that from a lot of my reviews.
Yeah, it's interesting how there's always statistics on things like that. There's statistics on like, oh, like the probability, like, oh, it's like 20-30%, but I'm like, I think it's much higher. Especially
It's
like
higher because people don't talk
most
about it.
exactly. I think that all the things that people, especially if you're surveying them, they're not going to tell you the truth.
Nope.
I see this a lot. It's like, yeah, male stuff with psychology and stuff. They'll be, oh, well, one in five men or something. I'm like, okay, well, it's probably like 3 in 5 because like half
Yeah,
of them were lying to you during this because they were
exactly.
embarrassed or it was too traumatic or too
Right.
personal or
And
whatever it
people don't want
was.
to talk about how many miscarriages they had or
Right.
infertility because they see all their friends getting pregnant really fast and they think, oh, well, they're pregnant in 5 minutes. So I can't tell them that I'm having trouble. So I just say, I don't know if I want kids. That's what a lot of
Yeah.
people say.
That and like, even your friend, oh, they got pregnant. You didn't hear about how, a year before that they had a miscarriage or something because it is
Exactly.
like, yeah, okay, you get pregnant, but then it's like, yeah, after the first trimester, I mean, that's what they always tell you, right? Like the first trimester is the highest risk in terms of a pregnancy doing that, like not setting
Right.
right or something in the
Right.
uterus and the body will, abort it or whatever to for the health of the woman and all that for your body kind of does that but yeah I mean it's so common but I was just curious about the distance because I'm thinking like Kurt Vonnegut when he wrote Slaughterhouse-Five like that kind of opening chapter he kind of does this almost nonfiction where he talks about going to an old war buddy's house he said it took him like 40 years to be able to write this novel.
Yeah.
I just have to be removed from it because people think, oh, just write it. But it is like you almost get distracted by how intensely you're feeling it. And obviously, you want emotion, you want to be intense, intense and stuff when you're writing stuff, but it's almost too much, so you can't do anything. You're almost paralyzed by the
But
grief
sometimes
or
it's
the
like therapy.
right.
Like you're
Yeah, yeah.
getting it out, especially when it's been that long for me. You're writing something and you're seeing it come out of characters' mouths,
Right.
but you can stay a little removed from it, even though you're writing something really personal, like the dialogue.
Yeah. And I noticed that, I mean, obviously this is not even close to your experience of this, but I noticed it for something in my own work. You know, I can't write about a place I'm living in for some reason. Like when I was living in Maryland, where I'm from, when I it wasn't until I moved away to Louisiana for grad school, I started studying everything in Maryland when I would write things. And then when I moved away from Louisiana to Vegas, where I am now, I started studying everything in like southern Louisiana. And I don't know why, but something in me had just started doing that. I was like, maybe when I move away from Vegas, everything will be set in
And
Vegas.
I'm
But
the opposite.
yeah.
I mean, well, two of my books are set in Los Angeles. The first one's in Shelton, Connecticut, but yeah. Oh, are you in Vegas?
I am in Vegas, and I know
Oh,
you
my
got a
sister
little.
lives in Henderson.
Oh, okay, great. I'm in the northern part. Yeah, we like it out here, but it is hot. It's been hot the last few days. It was
Yeah, I
108
know.
yesterday. Yeah, I think it's getting up there right now. It's not terrible at this time in the morning, but it's rough.
Yeah.
But getting to that, I wanted to sisterhood, siblings in general too. Brotherhood, sisterhood, all that. Not only is it a great device for fiction and writing, but I think siblings are kind of so important. You know, why did you make the three women in this novel sisters? And what is it about siblings that allows a writer to kind of flourish and swim around in this, water here with the kind of the I'm thinking something like Jonathan Franzen, the novelist. He always
Mm,
says it's technique,
yeah.
because if you have a family dynamic, automatically there's a dynamic that you can work in with as a writer, be like, oh, these people, these two siblings don't like this one, or this one's the bitch sister, or, anything like that. Yeah. Siblings, using them in fiction, or yeah, your experience in life. Why did you decide to make the sisters, or at least, the three women, all sisters, all of that? Yeah.
I knew at some point I would write a book about sisters because I have two and I'm very close to them. And but I also knew that when I wrote a book about sisters, they were going to be so different than my sisters and myself that nobody could look at it and go, "You are this character." Um, my sisters and I, we had a really good relationship. Mostly, I mean, we had a better relationship as adults, but I was always super duper close with my younger sister, and my older sister and I, of course, were closer together, so we had more competition and more of that. But we like love to give each other crap all the
Right.
time. And we're very sarcastic with each other. And that's just part of our nature. And so I knew I wanted to write siblings that got along really well, but had their issues. Because when you're growing up with somebody, you more than likely are going to have issues with
Right.
them. And so I wanted to write that kind of camaraderie and also like, I'm not happy with you. I love you because you're my sister, but I also hate you right now.
Right.
And how them growing up also affects your growing up. You know, you're growing up with them. So
Yes.
your parents, that's why parents always say, but I raised these kids and they're all so different. You know, it's not on the parents. It's usually the way you're born. I mean, I know nature versus nurture, but I also think people come out of the womb a certain way.
Yeah.
I know my kids did. So, and then I wanted to write something with a mom that something happens with the mom that brings them all together because all the sisters are from different places. I mean, they all live in different places. They're all
Right.
from Los Angeles, but they all live, one lives in San Diego, one lives in where does the other one live? Oregon. And so they all live in different places, and one lives in Arizona. So I thought this would be a great technique to bring them all together to deal with something and find out these family secrets that they had no idea. I mean, even now, I'll go visit my mom who's 88 and she'll say things to me, and I'll be like, I didn't know that. Who's that?
Right.
What, wait, what happened? So there's always, and I don't even know that there's secrets, but there's always things that your parents don't always tell you
Right.
because they don't think about telling you. And then over time, you're asking the right questions and they tell you something that just blows your mind. Or
Right.
even about your parents, you find out things. And that's kind of what this novel is about is their mother had some major secrets and they grew up not knowing those secrets, but they made decisions based on their mother's secrets. So once they start finding out what those secrets are and they do this whole sort of mystery thing to figure out all the clues and it leads them to Vegas and it leads them to Brooklyn and once they figure it all out, they start to realize the decisions they made in their lives and their, later history, not when they were little kids, but were based on things that their mother did. So
Yeah.
I just found that fascinating, and I just love siblings. I mean, I just love that. I mean, brother and sister usually have different relationships than sisters do. There's less competition from what I've heard. So I just like that relationship.
Yeah, same. I came from a family of three as well, and I was the middle child as well. So there's
Me
this kind
too.
of, yeah, there's this, there is, and we were close family. My sister was older than me and my brother. My brother and I were very close, only 18 months apart. So we were this kind of, I always say he's my best friend. Yeah, like we still are. And when you mentioned that dynamic of, you're making fun of each other all the time. It's weird that this, people would view this, oh, how insulting, but no, it's a kind of a loving thing though. It's weird how, and coming back to comedy, right? Comedy being used to increase the bonds of love or show the bonds of love in some way. Yeah, like kind of, we would do this to my parents too. All three of us would kind of make fun of them and gang up on them. And I'm sure, my children are going to do that. And I'm sure your children do that to you and
Yeah,
your
they do it
husband.
now. I
Yeah,
know.
of course. Yeah. And it is
Yeah,
kind of,
exactly.
it feels like, oh, they're giving me a hard time, but there is kind of a loving thing to that. I mean, obviously there's tears to this. Obviously, if somebody's doing it maliciously, it's not as loving, but like usually when
Right.
family does it, it's kind of in a loving way, and it's this weird thing that only siblings can kind of do.
Yeah.
I would say like my brother and I, we have our own language almost. Like me and my
Mhm.
brother and my sister, we communicate through certain ways that people that weren't raised in our family, like in our household for those 20 years that we were together or whatever, don't understand. I remember when my sister got married, her husband didn't quite understand what we were even saying to each other at some times. And like my
No, I
wife,
totally
yeah,
get
like
that.
does the
I mean,
same thing. Yeah.
when I wrote this book, I'll tell you, I re-edited it because I wanted to make sure very clearly that people didn't think they were mean to each other or being jerks.
Right.
So I made sure by going back in and making sure there was enough love in there between them that you would get it. And thank God people did, because I will say that when I put it out, I was nervous. People would say, they're horrible to each other. And nobody said that, thank God.
Right.
But it
Yeah.
is scary because, like, if somebody doesn't have siblings or they don't talk to their siblings or whatever, they didn't have
Right.
that relationship, they may not get it. Like
Yeah.
you get it, but I mean, some people might not get it. And yeah, we have a very, like, we now gang up on my mom and we have our own chat and all that kind of stuff because it's just what siblings do.
Yeah. My wife came from that. She had, yeah, two sisters. There was like three girls and stuff, and that's what
Is she the
they
middle also?
No, she's actually the oldest. Yeah, so
Ah,
she's a little
okay.
bossier than the middle children tend to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just crazy how that works out. And yeah, the difference between sisterhood, brotherhood, like there's the same bond, but then it's a slightly different dynamic, and it is kind of, yeah, it's interesting how I think Franzen's right when he says something like that. Like it sets up a dynamic, and then you can choose to do that whatever you want with that. And as a writer, you can
His
make them
books are so
awful.
good at that.
Right, exactly. He's a master, maybe the best
Yeah,
living writer
I
at doing
agree.
that right now.
I
Yeah.
agree.
So, I mean, of course, it makes sense and it's logical and all of that, but it's hard to capture that magic. So, I just wanted to ask you about that. Yeah. I know I'm using the word magic, but some people would
No,
get
it is magic though.
exactly. Yes, good. Yeah. That's how we feel too. It's magic. We're doing magic here,
Yeah.
listener. That's what we're
Yeah,
doing.
exactly.
Speaking of magic, movie magic, TV writing versus novel writing. What would you say is the difference? And do you approach the two differently? Is there a difference method-wise? How do you view those two different things?
It's a huge difference because with TV, unless you're writing a spec, you're in a room filled with people and nobody really does anything on their own completely.
Right,
You go in the room and you talk about the outline, and the executive producers will arc, their whole series and say, okay, in this episode, we're looking at this. And then you'll write the outline and you'll turn it in, and then there's notes, and then you write the script, and then it goes through the room process, and then it's read at the table and the actors do it, and then you see what doesn't work and you're rewriting constantly. But you always have help no matter
right.
what. So
And
when I
immediate feedback, like with
immediate feedback,
actors and yeah,
media, because you
yeah,
hear your line
right,
said, and no script in television is usually, unless maybe it's the exec producer, and even at that, I know for sure exec producers take jokes from everybody. So nothing is always 100% originally yours. But in books, obviously, you sit down in a room and you write by yourself, and there's nobody to help you. But I did approach it. except for my first book, which I had no idea what I was doing. So that was like, trying to figure it out as I went. The other books I had complete outlines for. I knew where they were going. And even if I changed the outline, it was generally until the middle where I got in the middle and thought, maybe I'm going to go a little different way, or I'm going to change the ending, which is going to change the middle. But in general, I always had an outline. And like I said in the first one, it took me a long time to write the book because I truly had no idea what I was doing. I had read enough, but I
Right.
had no idea how to write a book. I knew how to arc, a 36-page script, but that's so different because that's 36 pages and, you're kind of going off of somebody else's work because you're writing their characters. So I sat down and I just sort of wrote I had created this character through prompts. I had taken like a coaching class and they were giving us prompts and I just kept writing from a fiction standpoint and I realized there was this character coming through and I named her Maggie. And I was like, well, she's got a lot to say. So then I decided to write her story and take all those prompts that I had written, descriptions and scenes and turn them into an actual book. And when I got in the middle of it, I realized I don't know where I'm going with this thing. I sat down, and my husband's in the business. So he's like, you have to sit down. You have to write an outline. You can't just do what you're doing. This isn't going to work. So I did. And then I put all the chapters down in front of me and I moved them all around and
Right.
figured out exactly how it was going to go. And even at that, I changed the ending. So
Right.
you never know. But the other two, I definitely, I also had a developmental editor from the beginning on the other two where I would write a chapter and send it to her, and she would edit it as I went along. And then when it was all done, I would re-edit it. I would go over it a lot. I give everything to my husband to edit because he's such a
Right.
good editor. So then he reads it and edits it. And then I go back in and take all his notes and re-edit it. And then I send it to a copy editor and a proofreader and all that stuff. But it's very different
Right.
writing TV and writing books. They're harder, but I like the freedom of creating my own place and my own characters. I mean, it's definitely freeing.
Right.
And in the creative process, it makes you feel like I just created this whole world and all these characters that are living in this world. And I did it all by myself.
Yeah, yeah, we've had a couple of filmmakers and stuff on the podcast that have written novels and they've all said the same thing. Yeah. One of them even said, budget constraints. You don't, I can blow up this helicopter. I don't
That's
have to negotiate
that's so
about it.
funny that you
Like,
said that because in my first book, when I was writing it, it was always in like a house, basically.
right.
My husband said, you have no budget restraints. You can take them anywhere you want. You can go to any restaurant, you can go to anywhere. I thought, oh yeah, that was another thing that was actually
Right.
really hard because you just have these sets when you're doing TV and you have to stay within those sets and you might be able to create one other set, but you're not going to be able to do much more with their budget. So it opens you up, but you have to think that way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a hard thing sometimes to do is realize I can go anywhere I want.
Right. Yeah. It's almost too much freedom sometimes. You need
Exactly.
those restrictions to kind of guide
Yeah,
you through this abyss of anything you want to do. Well, how are you going to get there? Kind of restricted in this
exactly.
way. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very interesting. So you said you mostly outline this stuff, and this is where we kind of, I know we're bumping up against time, Leslie, but we
that's
all
a,
get to these kind of craft questions, these last few.
yeah,
We're running
yeah,
towards the end here. And that's one of the things we'd like to ask, like kind of you said you outline and stuff like that with most of your projects.
yeah.
And I wanted to ask briefly here when you mentioned it, the developmental editor. Is that something you did on your own? Or did the publisher give that, or did you go out and do that on your own for the novels?
My first publisher told me about this one woman that I could work with, and I really enjoyed working with
Right.
her. So that's why I worked with her on my other two books. I am writing a third right now, and I'm not using a developmental editor right this minute. I will probably give it to her afterwards,
Or-
partially because of cost, honestly.
Right.
It's very, very expensive to send your pages to somebody that often and then get them on the phone and talk it through. And partially because I think I've learned a lot. I can self-edit a lot better now that I will definitely send it to an editor when it's done, but I do feel like I don't need to do that process from the beginning. I'll send it to a development editor, but not somebody all the way through.
Right, right. That's interesting too. We love to talk about that on this podcast too, the kind of gaining confidence in whatever you're doing, if whatever project it is or artistic, medium. Yeah, that's always just a huge, huge thing. And you can see it when you read somebody's complete, where you can feel it through the pages as they mature, and you're kind of like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, they're really on fire at this section of their
And when
career
you go
here.
back
And
to their old books, you'll see, oh, okay, that's their first book. And even if you
right.
like it, you can see their development.
Yeah, fantastic. And like I said, the last couple are all kind of specific craft
Yeah,
questions that we like to ask writers
sure,
that
go
come
ahead.
on. One of them is, what is your writing routine like? How do you like to do it? You a morning person? Do you have any elaborate rituals? How do you like to do your writing routine?
I get up every morning at right before 7 o'clock and I go to a class where I work out and I see all my friends and I relax. And then I come home, I get a cup of coffee and I sit at my computer. And some days I'm just promoting because I've got books out there that I need to promote, as you know.
Right,
And some days I'm just writing. It just depends. But when I'm really writing and I'm really into something, I can sit there and I have to remind myself to even eat lunch. I mean, I
right,
can get really into it. And then usually from 10 o'clock, usually I stop at by 5 because I want to go read a book because I like to read in the late afternoon. So usually I stop at 5 and I don't usually write on the weekends. I usually take the weekends off.
right. Yeah, that's fantastic. Any elaborate rituals or anything beyond that? Just a cup of coffee and sitting there
Just
and
my coffee. That's my
right. Yeah.
important thing that I have to get home and have my coffee.
Fantastic. Yeah, I like to ask because sometimes people have these elaborate rituals and
Really?
superstition. We've had people describe, having to do like a meditation or something
Oh,
before they sit down to clear the head, and then other people are just like, I just make coffee or I just sit down when I
my
wake up
workout
and
is my meditation.
right, exactly. Yeah. And that too, I think that's important for maybe more important now where people are noticing it. But I mean, many writers have said, I mean, the body and mind, right? If
Mhm.
your body's in good shape, then your mind will help work better too. All of
Exactly.
that stuff like really matters. So yeah, that makes sense. I find it too, if you're stuck on something, sometimes exercise, whatever it is, can just clear the head a little bit, enough that like it's clear because you're doing something else, and then the answer just pops in there all of a sudden.
I'm
So
if I'm really stuck, I'll go and like read or take a walk or do something and just totally not think about whatever that is.
yeah. And then the answer just comes to you. That's,
The
yeah,
answer usually
fantastic.
comes to me late at night, honestly.
Yeah,
You just like lying in bed watching some stupid program, and I'll be like, oh, yeah, that's what's going to happen. I grab my phone and I write down on my notes page, whatever
I
it
was
is.
going to ask you if it's a notebook or phone or yeah, you
No, I
have a
usually
little
use my phone.
notes app.
Sometimes, if I'm sitting at my desk, I'll use a pad of paper.
Yeah,
But if I'm in bed, I'll just grab my phone and just start writing all these notes about what a character is going to say, or because the characters talk to you.
right.
And so all of a sudden, it's like you'll hear, "Oh, that's what they want to do," or "That's what they're saying," and it just sort of comes to me.
Yeah, we had a playwright on once that said it was almost like hearing voices sometimes.
Yes,
Like, yeah, like you
sometimes it
feel like a
is if
crazy
you're really
person.
into it. Yep,
Yeah,
you're really into it. And I've had my first book, my character kept waking me up in the middle of the night. And it was weird because I
that's
didn't
great.
know she wants to do this. What? She wants to say this. It was weird.
I think it speaks to how in tune you were with the
Yeah.
project, probably, because if you're getting woke, I mean, that is, your mind is locked in, I think, if that was the
Well, they
case.
say
That's
write what you know, and I always write something that relates to me or a friend.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's fantastic. Another question we ask everybody that comes on here, and we don't need any specific numbers or anything. We like to ask, how do you make a living? Do you make any money off the literature? And the reason we ask this is because one, I try to dissolve the illusion that all these writers are millionaires, but also like, it's tough out there for writers, and we have a lot of writers listening that are just like, yeah, how's that going? Obviously, your day job or whatever. Most writers have to have a day job, but yeah, how do you make a living? Do you make any money off the literature?
I make money, but not enough to live off of. My
Right,
husband was, right now, he's not working at the moment, but he's been working since he was 26 as an executive producer. And I mean, he built his way up, but
right,
in television. So I mean, he makes that money,
right,
but my money that I make, I thank God right now, I'm making more than I'm putting out. Let's put it that way.
right.
But
Yeah,
it's still not gonna, I mean, like, it won't make a living.
right. Yeah, and that's
I
what
mean,
we hear. Yeah.
You hear about people that, get paid whatever, $1 million for a book. That's so
Yes.
rare.
It's
And most people, even if they have a huge publisher, a lot of them don't sell more than 500 books. I've been very lucky and I've sold a lot more than that.
right.
But a lot of people don't. And they think, well, I've got this huge, Simon and Schuster publisher, and I'm going to, I can't believe it. It's going to go great. Well, the thing is, though, they're putting out so much money probably to promote the book, and they're paying PR and all the rest of it. But they're also making almost no royalties. So
Right.
the publishers make most of that money. So they do make their advance, whatever that is, which have gotten less and less and less.
Right.
Unless
Yeah.
you are Kristen Hanna or somebody like that, you're making way less in advance, and you have to earn out that advance before. So you have to make all that money in order to make any money. And most of those people are making 15 to 20% off their books.
Right.
So it's very, very hard to really make a living as an author. You don't do it for the money, let's be real.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's how it always is too. Yeah, we usually, I mean, that's, I mean, we just like to ask it because it's rough out there. Yeah, it's rough
Yeah,
out there for people.
everybody should know that every single author I know usually ends up spending more than they make.
And then if people, I mean, you know this coming out of the Hollywood industry and all that, but I mean, people are like, oh, you get a $10,000 advance, but then once your agent and the taxes come through, you're really getting like $4,000
Yeah,
off of
you're
that.
not
Okay,
getting
like
much. I got advances for all of my audiobooks, and the agents take that thing and then you get something. It's yeah,
and the
it's
taxes and yeah,
yes, and the taxes, of
yeah,
course, yeah. So you don't make that much.
35 cents on the dollar.
Yeah,
So when you hear
exactly.
that big number, it's about 35
Exactly.
cents on the dollar that you're going to
Yep.
actually make.
That's true.
Yeah. All right. So the last couple of questions, we like to ask, reading anything good, watching anything good, listening to anything good, everything that you consume kind of fills your head. So we like to ask creatives when they come on, what's filling your head right now? And this could be anything. This could be high literary. This could be trash reality TV. I think all of those are valid in terms of where you're pulling inspiration. Anything good, listening, watching,
I just
reading?
finished reading Hello Beautiful, which I'm late to the game. That and Broken Country were both really good books. But I read everything. I mean, I read stuff that's in my genre. I read stuff that's out of my genre. I'm part of a book club, so I read whatever we decide to read, which is usually a little bit more literary. But I like trash reality TV.
Oh, yes.
I do like TV. I will
Oh,
say
yeah.
I don't usually watch sitcoms for whatever reason. I think I used to. I'll watch the old ones, but I don't usually watch new sitcoms. But I like I like reality TV. It's something I can relax at the end of the day and watch, and also I know this sounds crazy, but it tells me a lot about relationships because I watch
Yes.
shows like Married at First Sight. I don't know if you know that show,
I'm,
but
is that a TLC show? Because
I
I'm
think so because I just
TLC are the reality kings right now. Yeah.
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 But it shows you these people that didn't know each other till they get to the altar and then they get married. And you see relationships and you see the way people react to each other who don't know each other, but then think they know each other and think they're being intimate, but they're not. I find it fascinating. And I actually think it does help me know more about relationships.
Yeah. I
I mean,
heard
I've been married for 35 years. So for me, it's like, I love my husband, but we know each other really well. So
right.
find it fascinating for writing to watch that. And I also like dramas. I love law shows. I love medical shows. I watch all of those too.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the big one for, I mean, me and my wife are always 90 Day Fiance.
Oh, I've never seen that,
That's
which is
oh,
funny because everybody loves that.
it's fantastic. It's gotten more fake. Like it's more obvious that they're like casting from Instagram and the kind of getting
Oh,
influencers and
okay.
these
Well,
kind
I
of
think a lot of those shows are doing that now, which is
yeah.
they're not doing enough looking into these people either because they're finding things and then they kick people off.
Yes, that happened for a few of these, yeah,
Yes.
which is entertaining in itself for
Yes.
watching it. But yeah, I love that. I think it, I heard somebody that I had called Vanderpump Rules, like the
Mhm.
most important
I
sociological
watched it.
document like of
It's
our
true.
time. Yeah,
Because I don't know. I mean, I don't know that age. My kids are not that age, so I don't know that age really well. And they're a complete exaggeration of that age anyway. Most people aren't like that. But it's fascinating.
yeah, yeah, and it's entertaining. It's great.
Yes.
It's
I
great.
completely agree with you. I know. I
Yeah,
wish it would come back, but the cast, they're changing the cast, so I don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
what I like anymore.
Even Survivor and stuff. I like
I love
Survivor, and
Survivor.
yeah, they
Love
just kind of
Survivor. It's
great
all
stuff.
relationship stuff.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
great.
my husband used to tease me. He's like, "Are you watching dating shows? Like,
Right?
why are you
Yeah.
watching dating shows?" I'm like, "Because they're fun."
And they're great watching with like a significant other too, because then you can
Yeah,
talk about how great your relationship
yeah.
is
Yeah,
compared to like this,
exactly
these garbage
compared.
people on TV.
I
Yeah.
know. Last night I found Marriage Rescue, and I was
Okay.
cracking up watching that, going, "Oh my God, these people shouldn't be together."
Yes. 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 You're like, "Phew, I'm so much better than these
Yeah,
people." Like,
exactly.
yes.
I'm still married.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And the final question here, Leslie, is we like to ask, what are you working on now? You said you're doing a new novel that's taking up
I'm
your creative energy.
doing a new novel. I'm approximately halfway through and sort of working through where I really want it to go. It's sort of a rom-com, but it's not. I mean, this woman does have issues, but it's not as dark. And when I say dark, I don't think my novels are dark, but I mean like major issues as the others. I kind of wanted to take a little bit of a break and make this a little bit different.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Any reason for that? Were you just tired of the that, or was that last book where you're talking about like sisters and even the book before that, you're talking about traumatic thing. Was it just, oh, I need to take a break from this? It kind of spent in that thing, or you just wanted to experiment or
Both.
both?
I
Yeah.
did kind of want to experiment, but I also did kind of feel like, okay, they took all those books did take a lot out of me
Right.
because they do have pretty big issues. So I kind of thought, oh, I'm going to do a book that has a lot less issues and is a little bit more fun in the humor way. But there's an issue in this book. It's just not as much.
I said the world needs, I mean, I feel like the romantic comedy genre has just been neglected for like the last
Definitely in
decade and a
movies.
half. Yeah, movies. Yeah, I guess not novels I don't keep up with as much for that genre,
I
but
don't read romance, but this isn't really romance, this book.
right.
Not really.
Yeah, it's a
So
different thing. Yeah, it's
yeah,
this.
this
Yeah,
is more just fiction or whatever.
right. Yeah, with the kind of, I don't know, there's something about the romantic comedy too that was just so important to American
Yes,
life. The kind of the
I agree.
lightheartedness, the cuteness, and then also the seriousness, the love. Like this, it just is very
It was
kind of,
entertaining for
yeah,
everybody. I mean, it wasn't just so like, and it wasn't a 3 hour movie where you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, it's 3 hours," you know?
right.
It just sort of entertained, like Married at First Sight. You're just sort of entertained for a little while.
Yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely. Well, Leslie, I know we're over time here. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find your stuff? Website, social media handles, all that stuff. And this is all linked below as well. Listeners, go click on it, but just let people know where they can find your stuff.
Sure. I have a website. It's lesliearasmussen.com. I'm on Instagram at Leslie R. Author. I'm on Facebook at Leslie A. Rasmussen Author. I love to do book clubs. I do a lot of them virtually because people don't live in Los Angeles, but if they do, I go. And you can find my books anywhere.
Fantastic. And that is all linked below as well, listeners. Leslie, I was asking too, I forgot to ask this, whether are you do you have any desire to go back to screenwriting at all or sitcom writing at all? Or are you just like, I'd rather just have my own novels or I don't know, do you write any spec scripts still or anything that
I haven't, and I don't think, in all honesty, I could probably get back in at this point.
right.
Well, it's funny because my first agent was a big agent. Then he handed me off to a smaller agent, like a baby agent at a certain point. And that baby agent became the head of ICM. So it's like you never know.
Right.
But it's a tough business, especially now to get into. It's really, really tough. If I was offered something, yes, I would do it because I
Sure.
love the business.
Right.
But I don't know if I'd want to go back full time and do all those hours and everything else. So this, at least I have my own hours and I can do what I want or travel or do whatever I want.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. Fantastic. Again, Leslie, thank you so much for coming on. I know we've gone
Well,
over
thank
time here.
you.
It's been a pleasure. Please come back anytime,
I would
anytime you
love
need
to.
anything promotional or otherwise, next book, or if you just want to come talk about something, please. We're always open. We love having writers and artists on. We love to promote their stuff. So,
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
of course, of course.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy, heavy, heavy.
Bored.
I may say the male is entirely hostile. No! Inner
Resources.
life
a lack of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom, I should say.
Bored. Heavy.
I am heavy.
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.
If you're hearing this, it's because you are listening to the free public feed of Heavy Bored. To get complete, uncensored, uninterrupted, full access to this podcast, become a subscriber at patreon.com/heavybored. That's right, Heavy Bored is made possible by subscribers like you. For less than 1 cup of coffee per month, you will receive private access to uncensored, full-length episodes, Jerk Shop, heavy bonus content, subscribers-only AMA episodes, bonus extended interviews, and more. Come join the conversation today at patreon.com/heavybored.